Good evening. This is the third day I've been reading from Elie Wiesel's The Gates of the Forest, and this is chapter 3. I'm going to jump right in. In the morning, Gregor saw him and was surprised. He had thought of him as older and harder, barely 30 years old, a sharply defined, handsome, tormented face, a pointed chin, and a melancholy smile. His eyes, two firebrands which sear the flesh and pierce the skin of being. They gaze upon you, you will never be the same. The cave was bathed in a dim, warm light. It was beginning to grow hot. Gregor took off his shirt and advised Gabriel to do the same. Gabriel refused, and Gregor put his own shirt back on. They spent the whole day talking. Gabriel asked him to talk about his father. Was he kind, severe, a dreamer, talkative, a good listener? Gregor found it difficult to reply. His father was all these things, but he was beginning to realize that he hardly knew him. Was he a believer? I think so. You're not sure? No, I'm no longer sure of anything. With a look, Gabriel invited him to continue, and Gregor could not refuse. My father didn't speak often of religion to me. That was my mother's domain. My father was more interested in men. He listened to madmen, beggars, and drunks without ever losing his temper, without denying them either time or money. He never went to the synagogue except when it was time to pray. One day a scandal shook the town. Shlomo, the son of a judge in the rabbinic court, rebelled against the law and the traditions of his ancestors. One Sabbath morning on the square in front of the synagogue, he appeared with a cigarette in his mouth. His father waited for evening to come to sit down on the ground and tear his clothing, for the holiness of the seventh day prohibits mourning. I no longer have a son, he said to those who came to console him. I consider him dead. The next day, Gregor went for a walk with his father in their garden. For some time, his father strode nervously along without opening his mouth. Then he stopped short and said to his son, I want to talk to you. Yes, father, it's about Shlomo. It was unexpected. Gregor was younger than Shlomo and knew him only by sight. Yes, father, he repeated. What do you think of him, of his behavior? Why do you want to know? Are you afraid he has influenced me? Don't worry, he's never spoken to me. I didn't ask what you think of yourself, but what you think of him. The boy hesitated for a moment, carefully choosing his words. He's a renegade. His father shook his head and showed obvious disappointment. I knew that was what you'd say. That's why I wanted to talk to you. He resumed his walking, and there was an expression of such deep humility on his face that Gregor was touched. You mustn't judge him, son, above all when you're not even acquainted. That's like throwing stones at him from an ambush. You risk nothing, he everything. By speaking ill of him, you're sure to please everybody. People will say, there's a good boy, he's protecting us, he's avenging us. Too easy. Gregor enjoyed these walks where his father spoke to him as man to man. He could have gone on walking like this to the end of the earth. Later on, son, you'll learn how to steer clear of such traps by yourself. Meanwhile, you should know this. Never despise, never spit at a man who is broken with the faith of his fathers. He has broken the chain that centuries have forged. You never know where your spit may fall. On yourself, perhaps. Not today, but tomorrow. It's man's duty to make a free choice and to push back walls. To a man who is freeing himself from God, you owe particular respect, because more than others he's accomplishing his destiny. Gregor did not argue. They went back to the house. Shlomo left town, and a short time after the rabbinic judge died. Your father was a brave man, said Gabriel, braver than Shlomo. Was a brave man? Gregor exclaimed. You speak of it as if he were dead. Gabriel stared at him, then slowly lowered his head. Go on, he said. As long as you go on, he is still alive. One day, my father fell ill. Gregor continued hoarsely. We tiptoed into the room as if to avoid waking someone who was waiting for him at his bedside. The doctor came 3 times a day and several times at night. He whispered questions, and my mother whispered the replies. As for me, I stayed away from school to watch over him. Once at twilight, he opened his eyes and told me to sit on the edge of the bed. I want to talk to you, he said. Yes? Yes, he said, about death. I shuddered, and of course he saw. Does it frighten you? He asked. Yes. Whose death frightens you, mine or yours? Yours and mine too. His expression grew tender, and I had a guilty thought. I was happy to see him stretched out peacefully, no longer severe. Tears came to my eyes. "Listen, son," he said, smiling, "don't let death take you by surprise. In the second before it snatches you away, try to raise your head and question it. Your victory will outlive you." Gabriel was listening dreamily. "I like that father of yours," he said. "He terrified me. I could hardly open my mouth in his presence. I like him, and he doesn't terrify me. Talk to me about him some more." Evening came, and shadows again invaded the cave, elongating silently on the ceiling. Gregor looked for his own shadow, but could not distinguish it. "Never mind," Gabrielle said. "Don't be afraid." "Afraid? Where I come from, they say if your shadow leaves you, you're going to die within 30 days. Shadows are cowards. They refuse to follow the body into nothingness. That's why in our world, there are more shadows than human beings." "Does that mean I'm going to die within 30 days? "I didn't say that. I said, don't be afraid." And leaning lightly over his younger companion, he added, "I'll be your shadow. I'll protect you." They were near the entrance to the cave, behind the heavy tree trunk that hid it from view. They looked down at the town, which, like a brothel, undulated among the heavy folds of its curtains and draperies. Gregor's gaze pierced the forest and retraced the chain of his memories, which led him back to Maria, the old family servant. It was she who had planted in him the fear of the unknown. According to her, the world was full of demons, lying in wait to trip men up at every misstep or slip of the tongue. They were invisible. Night is their kingdom, just as it is in a sinner's imagination. "So you think you're alone, do you? Wrong, you're not. Solitude is a demon, one among hundreds. You are silent, and around you everything is silent. Wrong again. Silence, too, is a demon, stifling its mocking laughter. A woman or a man smiles warmly at you, and you smile back. Beware, they are demons, and their smile will bring about your downfall." Maria was one of the family. They consulted her before reaching any decision: where to go for the holidays, what to have for dinner, what color to paint the bedroom. There was nothing she couldn't do, no trouble she couldn't remedy. She was never caught without an answer or a clever idea. Once a year around Christmas, she went back to the remote village where she had left a father or a lover or both, and came back with a bag full of hazelnuts. Even now, whenever Gregor ate a nut, he thought of her, a small, plump body and a sharp tongue, which she used to conceal her tenderness. Everyone tried to stay on her good side for fear of provoking her anger. When Gregor's family was forced to leave home and live in the ghetto, Maria returned to her native village for good. She was distressed but reluctant to show it. "I'm glad to be leaving," she said. "The man I love is waiting for me, and I'd have left even if you weren't going away." Then suddenly she began to sob. She kissed Gregor on the forehead, and he forced a smile. "You were right, Maria," he said. "There are demons after all, and they parade up and down the streets, visible to the eye. You were right, and I was wrong." Maria cried and blew her nose. "Don't worry," she said. "The war won't last forever. We'll see each other again." Before going away, she told him the name of her village and described in detail the shack where, in case of need, he would be able to find her. Later, when Gregor had to flee the cave, that is where he took refuge. "I'll protect you," Gabrielle repeated. "I'll be your shadow. Just be my friend. I'll be your friend, and the shadow will be your friend." And he proceeded to tell Gregor about the death of a friend who had his tongue torn out. He had the power, by the use of words, to dispel darkness. That's why they cut out his tongue. Who was he? I told you, a friend. A shadow? No, he was the opposite. He was the enemy of night. Don't ask me any more questions. I will tell you all you need to know, not more. He was a friend. And what is a friend? More than a father, more than a brother, a traveling companion. With him, you can conquer the impossible, even if you must lose it later. Friendship marks a life even more deeply than love. Love risks den- Love risks degenerating into obsession. Friendship is never anything but sharing. It is to a friend that you communicate the awakening of a desire, the birth of a vision, or a terror, the anguish of seeing the sun disappear, or of finding that order and justice are no more. That's what you can talk about with a friend. Is the soul immortal? And if so, why are we afraid to die? If God exists, How can we lay claim to freedom since he is the beginning and the end? What is death when you come down to it? The closing of a parenthesis and nothing more? What about life? In the mouth of a philosopher, these questions may have a false ring, but asked during adolescence or friendship, they have the power to change being. A look burns, and ordinary gestures tend to transcend themselves. What is a friend? Someone who, for the first time, makes you aware of your loneliness and his, and helps you to escape so you in turn can help him. Thanks to him, you can hold your tongue without shame and talk freely without risk. That's it. Gregor waited for him to go on, but Gabriel didn't finish his sentence. I envy you, Gregor said timidly. You envy me? I envy you such a friend. How do you know I have one? You said yourself that you had a friend whose tongue was torn out. It was afterwards that he became my friend, Gabriel shouted angrily. Afterwards, do you hear? Gregor had no more questions. Gregor had never had a friend. He had lost track of the one boy who might have become one when he moved to another part of town. When they saw each other again, years later, it wasn't the same. He must have been 8, perhaps a little older. A dark, narrow street on a day when the town was blanketed with snow. A lowering sky seemed to threaten the earth below. Gregor walked uncertainly towards school, hardly daring to raise his head or even to breathe, because he knew he was on enemy terrain. He was not misled by the apparent peace and quiet, because he knew that the gang was lying in wait. They would leap on him from the recessed doorway or the corner where all summer long there had been a gypsy sitting, to beat up a lone Jewish child, to rub his nose in the mud. That was the gang's idea of amusement. It had gone on for centuries, so it was more than a habit. It had become a tradition, a law. Without this game, there would be no organized life. It had to be played for the good of the community. Every generation gave birth to a gang, and every gang knew how to stalk its prey. Years before, the dead body of a Jewish child had been found in the gutter. The gang had clubbed him to death and left him. Gregor knew that they were there, that they had gotten up early in the morning in his honor, but he went on, a lamp in his hand to light up his path through the snow. Cold bit his cheeks and brought tears to his eyes. His legs were unsteady, and there was fear in his throat. Perhaps he should return to the house and get his father to take him to school. Usually Maria was the one to take him there and bring him back, but she was ill that morning and had to stay in bed. His mother was still asleep and his father was busy, and he had decided to set forth alone rather than disturb them. Surely he was big enough to face the darkness alone. But now he regretted his decision. It would be wiser to turn back, to knock at his father's door and admit that he was afraid. His father knew all about the gang, and he knew about the leader, whose name was Pishta, the son and grandson of notorious Jew baiters who had passed the gang leadership on to him. His father would understand, all right, but there remained the fact that he didn't approve of weakness and cowardice. Gregor continued on his way, but suddenly he stopped, almost dropping his lantern, caught by surprise. Someone had called out his name. "Hey, it's you!" asked the voice. "Yes," he whispered back, wondering who it could be. A door opened and a lantern appeared. "My name is Lieb. My father's a coachman. My friends call me Lieb the Lion. I know who you are. We're neighbors. I'm also going to Heder. Come, let's walk together." He was in a hurry to start out, but Gregor tugged at his sleeve and whispered warningly, "The gang." "I know," said Lieb calmly. "Aren't you afraid?" "Yes, but it doesn't matter." They took several steps together. The crunching of the snow filled Gregor with terror. Under their load of snow and ice, the houses were silently threatening, like snatchers of children. "Yes, I'm afraid, but it doesn't matter," repeated Lieb the Lion. He was the older and taller and the stronger of the two, and even his lantern seemed to be bigger and heavier. He squeezed Gregor's arm and said encouragingly, "Come on, you're not alone." The flames of the lanterns wavered, and Gregor bit his lip in fearful expectation. There was the door, encircled by shadows. It seemed as if the century-old gypsy was still crouching there, motionless, like a block of darkness. Lieb was silent, tense. Suddenly the earth trembled. It was the attack. The gang, with Pishta at its head, fell upon two boys, shouting savagely, dirty Jews, go to Palestine, you killed Christ." You'll see what it costs to kill Christ. You're going to pay for his blood. Set phrases picked up at home, in school, at church, in the street. The shouts echoed from house to house and multiplied in number and volume. It seemed as if windows were thrown open and hundreds of heads distorted by hate joined the shouting. Gregor had an urge to run in any direction, to break through the circle that was closing in around him, but he looked at Lieb, who had not lost his calm, his self-assurance, and held his ground. Gregor dropped his lantern, however, and held his hands up protectively to his face. Lieb's stance was different. He stood still like a rock, with his legs spread apart, his teeth clenched, and his eyes only half open, waiting for the attack. Gregor admired him. He seemed to have grown until his head brushed the clouds. Lieb remained motionless and straight. When the enemies were within reach, unexpectedly and deliberately, he raised his lantern and swung it in circles around his head, bringing it down upon them without saying a word. He was a fortress surrounded by a wall of fire. For a few seconds, Gregor stared at him with stupefaction, unable to believe his eyes. This can't be Lieb, the coachman's son, he said to himself. It's a hero from another age, Yehuda Hamakabi or Bar Koba. I said that wrong, of course. Come to chastise the enemies of Israel. But Lieb shook him out of his dream. Look out for that bastard on your left. Pick up the lantern and strike. Go ahead, I'll tell you, do it again. His voice was steady and empty of fear. Hurry, said Judah, the Maccabee. Pick up your weapon and do what I do. Gregor obeyed. The dream pleased him. He bent over, picked up the lantern, and began to swing it, hesitantly at first, then more rhythmically. The weapon proved to be effective when it came into contact with the body, and a cry of pain pierced the cold, early morning air. Gregor felt proud and strong and free. He wanted to dance and sing with joy. Now he, too, belonged to the kingdom of legend. The fight lasted a good quarter of an hour. Pista ordered a retreat, and the gang, many of them bleeding, fell back. The sun rose over the town, and the street returned to its wintry calm. Gregor and Lieb laid down their arms and relaxed. Lieb still looked serious, but Gregor was eager to talk and to compare experiences. Lieb looked at him and said, "You're wounded. So are you." They took off their fur gloves and washed their faces with snow. Gregor had never been so happy. After that, Gregor persuaded Maria to stay home, and he and Lieb walked to school together. The gang did not appear again, and Gregor was secretly disappointed. They cut out his tongue, and he became my friend, Gabrielle said loudly. Do you hear me? Every man who has his tongue cut out becomes a friend of mine. Yes, I hear, said Gregor, looking the other way. The idea that Gabrielle was suffering in his presence, as if to underline his incompetence and lack of fidelity, was unbearable. Later in the evening, Gabriel told another story. He folded his arms over his chest and spoke in a low voice, barely moving his lips. Gregor felt close to him, to what he had to say, but not yet to his suffering. The Talmud tells us, said Gabriel, that the Messiah sits waiting to be called at the gates of Rome amid beggars, cripples, and other outcasts. The Kabbalah, on the other hand, says that he conceals himself far from men and near to God in the most holy and inaccessible sanctuaries, and from there he sees time unfold, time filled with pity and distress, and beyond time, eternity. Gregor was sensitive to every tremor of the night. The war is never going to end, he thought to himself. Too bad, for this is where it would meet its defeat. For years, Gabriel went on, I would cry and pray God to renew joy in the heart of Israel and to rebuild the temple, his dwelling. I spurred my vision to traveling faster and farther into space, seeking to pierce the veil that conceals the future and to penetrate its most profound secrets. I wanted to discover the sanctuary of the Messiah, to grip him by the shoulders and bring him forcibly to the earth. One night I stood before the prophet Elijah and demanded his help. Elijah is the prophet of harshness and wrath. When he was alive, no one dared approach him for fear of being scarred. Even kings, especially kings, masters sated with power and glory, trembled before him. When it was time for him to die, the angel of death drew back and declared himself unable to take him. That is why he is the only one of the elect that rose alive to heaven. God sent his chariot of fire to fetch him, and Elijah has never returned it. He needs it for his wanderings. The prophet of thundering word has become a prophet of consolation. He made an agreement with God on Mount Carmel, saying, I shall go against my feelings and be angry with your people, who are even more mine than yours. But on one condition only, you will let me return among your unhappy children in a different role, to warm the dwellings of the poor and to lighten their burdens by foretelling their end. Needing Elijah's services, God accepted this condition. And because he likes those who stand up to him, he gave to Elijah an important mission. You shall be the only one to know the hour when the Messiah will go down to earth to mend my creation, to make it a link between myself and man, between the voice and its echo, between the voice and its source. You shall be the announcer. It is for this reason, too, in order to be ready to appear on the horizon, that Elijah has kept the chariot of fire. And this is why it is to him that I presented the urgency of the situation and the dangers threatening our people. Madmen, unconscious and conscious, I told him, are preparing to kill them in cold blood. Indeed, they have already begun. If the Messiah doesn't hurry, he may be too late. There will be no one left to save. I spoke to him of Jewish children with dreams in their eyes, massacred in front of their speechless parents, who went to join them in the grave. I recalled the phrase of the Talmud. Ever since the destruction of the temple, the power of prophecy has been given to children. Soon, I said, there will be none of them left. Our only prophets will be dead children. And I also said to him, to you, everything is simple because you are an angel. Try being a man among men or a child among men, and you will see why to wait any longer would be a crime. Time is no longer abstraction, but a river of blood and death, running into a sea of death and blood. Elijah smiled at me, and if angels were able to cry, he would have cried. I know, he said, nodding his head, I know. I walk across this land. At every step, I sink to my knees and pray God to kill me. I get up and walk and fall again and again, ask for death. But death evades me. I'm condemned to live, to watch, to observe, and to witness the unfolding of the Holocaust. I was sorry for him. In return, he told me a secret. The Messiah is not coming. He's not coming because he has already come. This is unknown, but he's neither at the gates of Rome nor in heaven. Everybody is wrong. The Messiah is everywhere, ever present. He gives each passing moment its taste of drunkenness, desolation, and ashes. He has a name, a face, and a destiny. On the day when his name and face and destiny are one, all mask will fall, time will be freed of its chains, and he will link it to God as he will link to God drunkenness and desolation and ashes. When will this day be? But he was sworn to secrecy and could not say. God himself prefers not to know. If he knew, the coming of the Messiah would no longer be an act of freedom. If God chooses to be in the dark, I said, that's his business, but I want to know. You're blaspheming, my son, said Elijah reproachfully. If God prefers to wait, I continued, heedless of his reprimand, it's because he can afford to, but I can't. We can't. For us, every minute counts. Every sacrifice counts. You are blaspheming, he repeated gently, as if he were envious, as if he would have liked to blaspheme as well. God's final victory, my son, lies in man's inability to reject him. You think you're cursing him, but your curse is praise. You think you're fighting him, but all you do is open yourself to him. You think you're crying out your hatred and rebellion, but all you're doing is telling him how much you need his support and forgiveness. No, you mustn't blaspheme against someone who shares your suffering. You're asking the impossible. So much the better, but I have no right to tell you anymore. Later, you'll understand the importance of the mystery. You'll see the light, and perhaps it will pervade you. For the present, let it suffice to know that the Messiah is already among men. The rest, after all, is less important. Gabriel suddenly stopped speaking and did not say another word for the rest of the night. His strange story left Gregor perplexed. Gabriel had seen the prophet Elijah? Where? How? They had spoken of the Messiah? Was it possible to imprison the Messiah with words? The Talmud says of the Messiah that he knows how to sing. To Gregor's father, he was something rather than someone. The Messiah, he used to say, is that which makes man more human, which takes the element of pride out of generosity, which stretches his soul towards others. Gregor would have liked to talk about this to Gabriel, but Gabriel had wrapped himself in silence, as if he were listening to someone far away, perhaps to the prophet Elijah. Oh, winner of the 1986 Nobel Peace Prize, The Gates of the Forest by Elie Wiesel. If you haven't listened to chapters 1 and 2, go back and listen, because what's happening is Gregor is a 19-year-old boy in a cave above a town where they once lived, and he's waiting on his father to return, but his father doesn't return, and he's tried not to be afraid, and he's suddenly experiencing the sounds of someone, and this stranger approaches, a 30-year-old man who ends up inhabiting and hiding with him in this cave. And they see clouds which rise up really as the the clouds are the ashes of the people who've been incinerated. So there talk about shadows and ghosts and time losing meaning and context and folding in upon itself, and the Messiah, and witnessing the suffering and having talks about memories and the Talmud. And I don't know as much about all of the Jewish history and culture and semblances, but this is a human story. It is a human story, and it can, even though it's Jewish, it doesn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you. And it's full of mystery and beauty even still. And like I said on the first day, this is one of the books that I missed. It was in storage. I kept thinking about it all during COVID. And I'm just now re-experiencing it. And I know you wouldn't go out and read it, so I decided to read it aloud and share it with you. So I know I say words incorrectly. And I thank you for listening, and I hope you'll continue to listen. I think that we're in a very scary time. I started getting the urge to read this aloud after the generals were summoned to Quantico, and I watched that horrendous, blasphemous display, and it's very disconcerting. So I don't know what time we're in or what's happening, but this is not normal. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened elsewhere, but it may be happening here. And some of the people who are Christian are getting caught up in a lot of the fury and the rage and the propaganda, and are being used. And I'm not sure what harm is going to come, if any, to others. But we must find ways to have courage, to go into hiding, to take care of ourselves, but also to listen to one another, even when we're whispering. Pay attention to our experiences, and to remember and to tell stories. Good night. Come back tomorrow.